All right, we're doing Country of the Blind, an absolute classic, and you'll see why I chose Country of the Blind in just a second here. You and your seeing. He lifted his head for a last reply. I tell you, you will be dead before I am. You fool, said the one he had fought, and came back to kick him again and again. Will you never learn reason? But he turned hastily to join his fellows when Nunez struggled clumsily to his feet. He stood swaying like a drunken man. He had no strength in his limbs. He did his best to wipe the blood from his eyes. He looked at the impending mountain fall. He looked for a high rocky ledge he had noted that morning, and then he turned a despairful face to the encircling doom of the valley. But he did not attempt to climb any further away. What's the good of going alone, he said. Even if I could, I shall only starve up there. And then he saw Medellina Sorte seeking him. She emerged from the little door, and she was calling his name. That's like, his wife, girlfriend thing. In some manner, she had contrived to slip away and come search to find for him. Bagatoa, my dearling, Bagatoa, my darling, she cried. What have they done to you? Oh, what have they done to you? He struggled to meet her, calling her name over and over again. So he's blind, by the way. In another moment, her hands were upon his face, and she was wiping away the blood and searching softly and skillfully for his cuts and bruises. You must stay here now, she panted. You must stay here for a time until you repent. Until you learn to repent. Why did you behave so madly? Why did you say those horrible blasphemies? You don't know you say them. But how are they to tell that? If you come back now, they will certainly kill you. I will bring you food. Stay here. Neither of us can stay here. Look. She drew the air in sharply between her teeth at the horrible word, look, which she showed that his madness was still upon him. There it is, that thunder. What is it? A stream of rocks are pouring down by the meadows, and it is only the beginning of them. Look at them. Listen, anyhow, to the drumming of the beat of them. What do you think those sounds mean? That! And the stones, they are bouncing and dancing across the lower meadows by the lake. And the waters of the lake are brimming over and rising up to the further houses. Come, my darling, come. Do not question, but come. She stood hesitating for a moment. There was a frightful menace now in the storm of the sounds that filled the air. So basically, he can see, and he's just trying to tell this Valley of the Blind that, hey, there's this incoming, there's a rock fall. And in the Valley of the Blind, none of them have ever had sight at any point in their lives. Think of an uncontacted tribe. So they're just like, dude, what are you talking about? What is sight? What is look? What are rocks moving? What the... So it's trippy. He's like a madman to them. She crept into his arms. I am afraid, she said. He drew her to him, and with a renewal of strength, began to climb, guiding her feet. There we go. His blood smeared her face, but there was no time to remedy that. At first, she dragged upon him, and then, perceiving the stain she caused, She helped and supported him. She was sobbing, but also she obeyed. And he concentrated himself, now upon reaching that distant shelf. But presently he had to halt for breath, and then only was he free to look back across the valley. He saw that the foot of the cliff was sliding now down into the lake, scooping its waters before it towards the remoter houses, and that the cascade of rocks was now swifter and greater. They drove over the ground in leaps and bounds, with a frightful suggestion in their movements, as though they were hunting victims. They were smashing down trees and bushes and demolishing walls and buildings, and still the main bulk of the creeping mountain, deprived now of its supports, had to gather momentum and fall. It was breaking up as it came down, and now the little figures appeared from the houses and ran hither and thither. For the first time, Nunez was glad that Medina Sarote was blind. "Climb, my darling," he said. "Climb. I do not understand. Climb." A rush of terrified llamas came crowding up past them. "It is so steep here. Why are these creatures coming with us?" "Because they understand. Because they know we are with them. Push through them. Climb." With an effect for extreme deliberation, that mountainside hung over the doomed valley. For some tense instants, Nunez did not hear a sound. Nunez is the guy with sight. His whole being was concentrated in his eyes. Then came the fall, and then a stunning concussion that struck his chest, a giant's blow. Medina Sarote was an instant's impression of a sea of rock. Nanun was flung against the rocks. There we go. Medina Sarote was flung against the rocks and clung to them with clawing hands. Nunez had an instant's impression of a sea of rocks and earth and fragments of paths and walls and houses pouring in a swift flood towards him. A spray of wind-driven water bedewed him. They were pelted with mud and broken rock fragments. The wave of debris surged and receded a little and abruptly became still. And then colossal pillars of mist and dust rose up solemnly and deliberately and mounted towering overhead and unfolded and rolled together. There was a hyphen in between them. About them until they were in an impenetrable stinging fog. Silence fell again upon the world, and the Valley of the Blind was hidden from him forevermore. Yeah, so it's actually, these are really hard to read out loud because it's, what, a 100-year-old book? 200-year-old book? Something like that, 100-year-old. 120 years old. So the dialect is very different, and a couple of words mean different things, but more so there's like a lot of words to trip up over. Anyways, thank you all, and I will see you next time.